The galaxy was burning, and Ambassador Zethkri knew it. He stood in the main chamber of the Galactic Council ship, watching the holographic display show another red dot appear on the star map. Another world had fallen to the Vraktor Empire. The insect-like warriors had broken every peace treaty and started their march across the outer worlds. Zethkri's blue skin had turned pale with worry. His people, the Altarians, were known for their calm nature, but even he felt fear now. The Vraktor were different from other threats the galaxy had faced. They did not want to talk. They did not want to trade. They only wanted to conquer. How many worlds have they taken now? Asked Council Leader Yethra. Her voice was soft, like all her people. The Selenites had never known war on their peaceful home world. 12 systems, Zethkri replied. Over 50,000 beings are dead, or missing. The number hung in the air like a curse. In the peaceful galaxy, such losses were unthinkable. Most conflicts were solved with words, not weapons. When fighting did happen, it was small and quick. No one had seen anything like the Vraktor in over 1,000 years. We need help, said General Nextel. The old military leader was one of the few beings in the council who understood war. Our defense fleets are not strong enough. The Vraktor have better weapons and more ships. Zethkri nodded. He had been thinking the same thing for days. The council needed allies. They needed someone with military power who could stand against the Vraktor. But who? Most of the galaxy species were like them, peaceful traders and diplomats. The few warrior races were either too small to help or had already joined the Vraktor. The council was running out of options. What about the Outer Rim? Yethra suggested. There might be species we have not contacted yet. Zethkri walked to the main computer. His long fingers moved over the controls, bringing up a map of unexplored space. The galaxy was huge, and even after thousands of years, there were still empty areas on their maps. Computer, search for any species with faster than light. Travel in sectors 445 through 891, he said. The machine hummed for several minutes. Then, a soft tone indicated it had found something. One species detected, the computer announced. Located in System Sol 3. Sector 667. Species designation, human. Technology level, nuclear capable, with primitive faster-than-light engines. Zethkri felt a spark of hope. Nuclear weapons meant they understood warfare. Faster-than-light travel meant they could reach the battlefield. It was not much, but it was something. Show me their world, he ordered. The display changed to show a blue and green planet. It looked peaceful enough, with white clouds and large oceans. The computer began listing facts about the world and its people. Planet classification, unusual, high gravity, extreme weather patterns, dangerous wildlife, multiple large predators, frequent natural disasters. Zethkri frowned. The planet sounded harsh, but that might be good. Species from difficult worlds often made better fighters. Population 7 billion. Political structure, multiple competing nations. Military technology, advanced for their development level. Recent conflicts, ongoing conflicts. General Nextal asked. They are fighting each other. It appears so, Zethkri said. That was strange but not necessarily bad. Internal conflicts meant they had military experience. They would know how to fight. What else can you tell us about these humans? Yethra asked. The computer showed images of the creatures. They were taller than most galactic species, with strong builds and forward-facing eyes. Predator eyes, Zethkri noted. That was interesting. Physical capabilities, high endurance, excellent healing ability, resistance to injury, mental traits, problem-solving skills, adaptability, persistence. The more Zethkri learned, the more hopeful he became. These humans sounded perfect for what the council needed. They were warriors from a tough world who knew how to fight. Should we contact them? General Nextal asked, Zeth. Kree thought for a moment. It was risky to bring unknown aliens into galactic politics, but the Vrecta were getting stronger every day. Soon, they would be too powerful to stop. Yes, he decided. Prepare a diplomatic message. Keep it simple and honest. Tell them we need their help against an aggressive enemy. What should we offer them? Yathera asked. Technology? Trade agreements? Membership in the Galactic Council? Whatever they want, as long as they help us stop The message was prepared quickly. It was formal, but urgent, explaining the situation and asking for military assistance. Zethkree reviewed it one final time before sending it toward the human world. As the signal traveled through space, Zethkree allowed himself to hope. Maybe these humans would be the answer to their prayers. Maybe they would have the strength to stand against the Vrector Empire. He had no idea what he had just unleashed upon the galaxy. Far away, in the Sol system, Captain Jake Morrison was having a normal day aboard the Earth Defense Force ship. His crew was running routine patrols near Jupiter when the communications officer, Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez, picked up something unusual. Captain, I'm getting a signal from outside the system, she reported. It's not coming from any of our ships or stations. Morrison walked over to her station. What kind of signal? It's a transmission, sir. Audio and visual. And Captain, ... Double quotes. Amy paused, looking confused. I think it's trying to talk to us. Morrison felt his heart rate increase. This was it. The moment every human had wondered about, since they first looked at the stars. First contact with alien life. Put it on the main screen, he ordered. The image that appeared was unlike anything they had ever seen. A tall, blue-skinned being, with large eyes and a gentle expression. When it spoke, the words were translated by some kind of universal device. Greetings, people of Earth. I am Ambassador Zethkree of the Galactic Council. We come to you in desperate need of assistance. Our galaxy faces a great threat, and we believe your species may be able to help us. Morrison looked around at his crew. Science Officer Dr. Ben Carter was taking notes frantically. Lieutenant Rodriguez had her hand on the weapons console, ready for anything. The bridge was silent, except for the alien's voice. We offer friendship, technology, and trade in exchange for your military support against an aggressive empire. Please, respond if you are willing to discuss this matter further. The message ended, leaving the bridge in stunned silence. Morrison had trained for many situations, but not this one. Aliens were asking Earth for military help. They wanted humans to fight in some kind of galactic war. What do you think, Doctor? Morrison asked Dr. Carter. The scientist looked up from his notes. The technology in that message is incredible, Captain. If they're telling the truth about offering trade in technology, this could change everything for humanity. But they want us to fight for them, Lieutenant Rodriguez pointed out. We don't know anything about this war or who we'd be fighting against. Morrison nodded. She was right to be cautious. Throughout history, requests for military aid often came with hidden costs and dangers. Send a reply, he decided. Tell them we're interested in talking, but we need more information before we make any commitments. As the return message was prepared, Morrison wondered what kind of enemies these aliens were facing. How bad could it be if they needed to ask strangers for help? He would soon learn that sometimes the cure could be far more dangerous than the disease. 3 weeks after first contact, the human delegation arrived at the Galactic Council's main ship, Harmony's Light. Captain Jake Morrison stepped through the airlock, followed by Dr. Ben Carter and Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez. The artificial gravity felt different, lighter than Earth normal, and the air had a sweet smell that reminded Morrison of flowers. Ambassador Zethkree waited to greet them. When he saw the humans in person, something inside him shifted. They were bigger than he had expected, much bigger. Morrison stood nearly 2 meters tall, with broad shoulders and thick arms. All three humans moved with a strange alertness, their eyes constantly scanning the area around them. "Welcome aboard," Zethkri said, trying to keep his voice steady. "I am honored to meet you in person." Morrison smiled, showing white teeth. On his homeworld, showing teeth was friendly, but to Zethkri, it looked predatory. "Thank you for having us, Ambassador. We're eager to learn more about the situation." They walked through the ship's corridors toward the main conference room. Other council members stopped to stare at the humans. Most had never seen beings quite like them. There was something unsettling about the way they carried themselves, like they expected danger at any moment. In the conference room, the full council waited. Ithera sat at the head of the table, her pale selenite features calm and welcoming. General Nextel stood at attention, though he seemed nervous. Several other species were represented, the peaceful Altarians, the scholarly Vexnari, and the diplomatic Ceph. "Please," Ithera said, gesturing to chairs that had been adjusted for human size. Morrison sat down, but Amy and Dr. Carter remained standing behind him. This was not unusual for humans' military protocol, but it made the aliens uncomfortable. It looked like the humans expected an attack. "Let me begin by explaining our situation," Zethkri said. He activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red areas marked Vraktor territory. The Vraktor Empire has conquered 12 systems in the past year. They have killed over 50,000 beings and show no signs of stopping. Morrison studied the display with professional interest. "What's their ultimate goal?" he asked. "Conquest," General Nextel replied. "They want to control the entire Outer Rim, possibly more, and their military capabilities." The general brought up images of Vector ships and weapons. They have a fleet of approximately 200 vessels. Their main weapons are plasma cannons that can destroy entire city blocks. They also use shock troops for ground operations. Dr. Carter leaned forward. "What kind of casualties have they inflicted in ground combat?" The question surprised the council members. Zethkri checked his notes. In their assault on Kepler 7, they killed approximately 3,000 defenders, and twice that number of civilians. The humans exchanged glances. Morrison kept his expression neutral, but Amy frowned slightly. "How long did that battle last?" she asked. 6 hours, General Nextel said proudly. The defenders fought bravely. Again, the humans shared looks. Dr. Carter made notes on his tablet. The numbers seemed to interest them, though not in the way the council expected. "Tell us about their tactics," Morrison said. YITHIRA activated another display, showing footage from the Battle of Serindal. The images were horrific, buildings destroyed, smoke rising from the surface, Vector soldiers marching through ruined streets. The council members looked away from the worst parts. War was not something their species dealt with often, but the humans watched everything with calm attention. They studied the footage like scientists examining data. "They focus on intimidation," General Nextel explained. "They make a show of force, demand surrender, then attack if refused. Most worlds give up after seeing their demonstration." Morrison nodded. "What happens to worlds that surrender?" "The population is enslaved. Resources are stripped. The world becomes part of their empire. And worlds that resist, they are bombed until they surrender or until nothing remains." Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke for the first time. "What kind of bombs?" The general looked confused. "Plasma bombs. Very powerful. They can level several city blocks with one strike." Amy made a note. The humans seemed more interested in technical details than the horror of the situation. This puzzled the council members, who expected outrage or sympathy. Dr. Carter pulled up his own tablet. "We've been reviewing the data you sent us about the Vraktor homeworld. It's interesting." "In what way?" Zethkri asked. "It's very stable, consistent weather, abundant resources, no major predators. The gravity is actually lower than galactic standard." "Yes," Ithara said. "Most developed worlds are similar. Stable environments allow civilizations to grow and prosper. Dr. Carter and Morrison exchanged another look. What about your worlds? Morrison asked. Similar conditions. Of course, Zethkri replied. Why would anyone choose to live on a dangerous world? The question hung in the air. The humans didn't answer immediately. Instead, Dr. Carter activated his own display, showing images of Earth. The council members gasped. The images showed massive storms, active volcanoes, earthquakes splitting the ground, and predators that dwarfed most galactic species. One image showed a human settlement built right next to an active volcano. This is your home world? Ithra asked in shock. Yes, Morrison said simply. 7 billion people live there. But, why? General Nextall stammered. Why not find a safer planet? Earth is our home, Amy said. We adapted to it, not the other way around. Dr. Carter brought up more images. Cities built in earthquake zones. Farms in areas hit by regular hurricanes. Humans swimming in oceans filled with predators. Your entire species lives on a death world, Zethkri whispered. Morrison shrugged. We just call it home. The mood in the room had changed. The council members were no longer looking at the humans as potential allies. They were looking at them as something far more dangerous. Let me understand this, Ithra said carefully. Your people have been fighting your own environment, your entire existence. Among other things, Morrison replied. What other things? She asked, though she looked like she didn't want to know the answer. Dr. Carter brought up historical data. The council members watched in growing horror as centuries of human conflict played out on the screen. Wars involving millions of soldiers. Battles that lasted for years. Weapons that could destroy entire cities. You fight each other, General Nextall said. It wasn't a question. Sometimes, Morrison admitted, we're working on that. How many wars are happening on your world right now? Zethkri asked. Dr. Carter checked his tablet. Depends on how you define war. Major conflicts. About a dozen smaller ones. Maybe 50 or 60. The silence that followed was deafening. Council members stared at the humans with a mixture of awe and terror. These beings came from a world that would kill most galactic species in days. They fought constantly, both their environment and each other, and they considered this normal. Perhaps, Ithra said slowly, we should discuss what kind of assistance you might be able to provide. Morrison leaned back in his chair. Before we talk about that, we need to understand something. You say the Vector have killed 50 beings across 12 worlds, and you consider this a galactic emergency? Yes, Zethkri said. Is that not terrible enough? On Earth, Morrison said quietly, we call that a quiet Tuesday. The words hit the council like a physical blow. Amy and Dr. Carter remained expressionless, but the aliens could see the truth in their faces. To humans, the Vector's devastating conquest was barely noticeable. What? Ithra asked in a whisper. Have we done? Morrison stood up, his height making him tower over the seated aliens. You asked for our help against an aggressive enemy. We're willing to provide that help, but you need to understand what you're asking for. He gestured to Amy and Dr. Carter. We're not like you. We don't solve problems with words and compromise. When we fight to win, completely. And if we accept your help, Zethkri asked. Morrison's smile returned, and this time even he could see how it frightened them. Then your reactor problem will be solved, permanently, outside the conference room. Alarms began to sound. A communications officer rushed in, panic clear on his face. Ambassador, he gasped, the Vector have intercepted our communications. They know about the humans. A battle fleet is heading for their home world. Morrison turned to his team. How long until they reach Earth? 3 days, the officer replied. Amy checked her watch. The defense fleet will be ready. Dr. Carter was already sending messages on his tablet. I'll notify command that we have incoming hostiles." The council members watched in amazement as the humans calmly prepared for war. There was no panic, no fear, just professional efficiency. "You're not worried?" General Nextel asked. Morrison looked genuinely confused by the question. Worried about what? "It's just a battle." As the humans prepared to leave for their ship, Zethkri realized the truth. They hadn't asked for allies. They had asked for help from a species that viewed galactic-scale warfare as routine business. The Vrector were about to learn what real predators looked like. Dr. Ben Carter spent the night studying everything the Council had given them about the Vrector, while Captain Morrison prepared for battle and Lieutenant Rodriguez coordinated with Earth's defense forces. Carter tried to understand their enemy. What he found was disturbing, but not in the way the Council might expect. The Vrector homeworld of Kreshver was a paradise by galactic standards. Stable weather patterns, rich soil, plenty of water, and virtually no natural predators. The temperature rarely changed more than a few degrees. Storms were gentle rain showers. The most dangerous animal was roughly equivalent to Earth's rabbits. "They've never faced real hardship," Carter muttered to himself as he reviewed the data. The Vrector had developed technology and military might, but they had done so from a position of comfort and safety. Their entire species had evolved without serious environmental pressure on the ship's communication system. Reports were coming in from Earth. The planet was mobilizing for war with the calm efficiency that marked human civilization. Admiral Chris Baker had taken command of the defense fleet. Colonel Lisa Hayes was coordinating orbital platforms. General Rick Stone was preparing fighter squadrons. But there was no panic. Earth had been preparing for hostile contact since humans first reached space. They had always assumed that if aliens existed, some of them would be unfriendly. Captain Morrison returned to the ship's command center, where Carter was working. "What have you learned about our visitors?" Carter pulled up the Vrector files. "They're interesting, Captain. Physically, they're impressive. 2 meters tall, natural armor, multiple arms. Their weapons are advanced. But, they've never faced real opposition. Look at their conquest pattern." Carter brought up the tactical display. "They always start with the same approach. Show up, demonstrate their firepower, demand surrender. When that doesn't work, they bomb a few targets and repeat the demand." Morrison studied the pattern. "They're not used to fighting people who fight back." "Exactly. And when they do fight, it's more like ritualized combat than warfare. Individual challenges, honor duels, that sort of thing. They've never faced an enemy that treats war as a problem to be solved." Amy Rodriguez joined them, carrying reports from Earth's military command. "Admiral Baker sends his regards. The defense fleet is in position. We have 47 ships of the line, 322 fighter craft, and orbital defense platforms around every major world." Morrison nodded. In galactic terms, it was a modest force. The Vrector were bringing over 100 ships. But numbers weren't everything. "What about the civilians?" he asked. "Evacuated 2 underground shelters, or off-world. Standard procedure." Amy paused. "The Admiral wants to know if we're expecting this to be a real fight, or just a demonstration." Carter looked up from his analysis. "Tell him it will probably be over quickly, but not in the way the Vrector expect." Meanwhile, aboard the Harmony's Light, the Galactic Council was in crisis. They had monitored human communications and were horrified by what they heard. The humans were preparing for total war. Not a diplomatic solution, not a negotiated settlement, but complete military action. Ambassador Zethkri tried to understand the reports his staff was giving him. "They have weapons that can destroy entire continents." "Yes, sir," his aide replied, nervously. "They call them nuclear weapons. They have thousands of them, and they used these weapons against their own people. Twice, sir, in something they call the Second World War." Zethkri felt sick. The humans had used weapons of mass destruction against their own species. What would they do to aliens? General Nextall was reviewing human military history with a team of analysts. What they found defied understanding. Humans had been fighting continuously for their entire recorded history. Their technological development was driven largely by military needs. They had created weapons that could end all life on their planet, then carefully arranged their politics to avoid using them. They have a concept called total war, one analyst reported. It means using every available resource to completely destroy the enemy's ability to resist, and they consider this normal. General Nextall asked. Apparently, yes sir. Council leader Yathara was studying human culture, trying to understand how such a violent species could also produce art, music, and literature. The contradiction confused her. How could beings capable of such destruction also create beauty? Dr. Ben Carter could have explained it to her. Humans created beauty because they lived with constant danger. They valued art because they knew how easily it could be destroyed. They cherished peace because they understood the true cost of war. But the Council was learning this lesson too late. The Vrector battle fleet approached the Sol system with confidence. Admiral Kreshtak commanded from his flagship, the Voidrender. His force included 123 vessels, from massive dreadnoughts to fast attack craft. Target the third planet, he ordered his fleet. Standard intimidation pattern. These primitives will surrender quickly once they see our power. The Vrector had studied the human communications they had intercepted. The beings seemed typical. For a young species, aggressive but unsophisticated. Their ships were smaller than Vrector vessels. Their weapons appeared to be projectile-based, rather than energy weapons. It should be a simple matter to frighten them into submission. Admiral Kreshtak had conquered dozens of worlds using the same tactics. Show overwhelming force, destroy a few targets, demand surrender. Most species gave up immediately. The few that resisted were quickly crushed by superior firepower. But as his fleet entered the Sol system, something felt wrong. The humans were not hiding. Their ships were not fleeing. Instead, they were arranged in what looked like battle formations around their worlds, as if they intended to fight. Send them our standard message, Admiral Kreshtak ordered. The communication was transmitted in the universal trade language. Attention, primitive species. You are facing the might of the Vrector Empire. Surrender immediately and your deaths will be quick. Resist, and you will suffer before you die. The response came back almost immediately. This is Admiral Chris Baker of the Earth Defense Force. You have entered our territory without permission and made threats against our people. You have 30 seconds to withdraw, or we will open fire. Admiral Kreshtak was stunned. No species had ever responded to Vrector demands with their own ultimatum. These humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. They dare threaten us? His tactical officer asked, in disbelief. Apparently so, Admiral Kreshtak replied. Very well. Destroy one of their smaller ships. That will show them our power. The Voidrender's main plasma cannon charged up, targeting a human destroyer on the edge of their formation. The weapon fired, sending a bolt of superheated energy across space. The human ship's shields absorbed the blast without visible damage. Immediately, alarms began sounding throughout the Vrector fleet. Incoming missiles, the tactical officer reported hundreds of them. Admiral Kreshtak looked at his displays in confusion. The human ships were launching what appeared to be primitive projectile weapons, but there were so many of them, and they were moving faster than anything he had ever seen. Point defense systems, engage, he ordered. The Vrector ships began firing at the incoming missiles, destroying many of them, but not enough. The remaining weapons struck the Vrector fleet with devastating force. These were not the simple explosives Admiral Kreshtak expected. They were nuclear-tipped missiles, each one carrying the explosive power of a small star. The Vrector ships, designed for intimidation rather than prolonged combat, found their shields overwhelmed by weapons that humans considered conventional. 3. Vector ships disappeared in nuclear fire within the first minute of combat. What? Are these weapons? Admiral Kreshtak demanded. Before anyone could answer, the human ships began moving. They didn't advance in the formal battle lines that characterized galactic warfare. Instead, they swarmed like predators, using tactics that seemed to assume every engagement was a fight to the death. Admiral Baker's voice came over the communication channel again. You fired on our ships. This is now a combat situation. Surrender immediately, or we will destroy your entire fleet. Admiral Kreshtak realized he had made a terrible mistake. These were not typical galactic citizens who could be intimidated into submission. These were Deathworlders, predators who had spent millennia learning to kill efficiently. Full retreat, he ordered. All ships, withdraw immediately. But as his fleet tried to escape, he discovered the humans had surrounded them. It was a tactic that required a willingness to accept massive casualties that no civilized species would consider. But humans were not civilized by galactic standards. They were something far more dangerous. Aboard the Spire, Captain Morrison watched the battle unfold with professional satisfaction. The Vector are trying to retreat, Amy reported. Let them go, Morrison decided, but make sure they understand the message, which is... Morrison smiled, that predator smile that had terrified the Council, that Earth is under human protection, and humans protect what's theirs. The surviving Vector ships fled the Sol system, carrying with them news that would change the galaxy forever. They had encountered a species that treated interstellar warfare as routine business. A species that had turned violence into an art form. The humans had won their first galactic battle. It would not be their last. Admiral Chris Baker stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Defiant, watching the scattered remains of the Vector fleet retreat into deep space. The battle had lasted exactly 47 minutes. In that time, the Earth Defense Force had destroyed 38 enemy vessels and damaged most of the rest. Human losses: 0 ships destroyed, minimal damage to 3 destroyers. Pursuit? Asked his tactical officer, Commander Rick Stone. Baker considered it. Standard human military doctrine called for pursuing a defeated enemy to prevent regrouping. But this was first contact with galactic civilization. Starting an interstellar war on their first day might send the wrong message. Negative. Let them run, but I want full intelligence on their retreat path and destination. Baker turned to his communications officer. Send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them the threat to Earth has been neutralized. Also tell them we'd like to discuss terms for our assistance against the Vector Empire. Across the Sol system, human forces were already analyzing captured Vector technology and tactical data. What they found confirmed Dr. Carter's assessment. The Vector were dangerous by galactic standards, but they had never faced an opponent that treated warfare as a science. The news of Earth's victory reached the Galactic Council within hours. Ambassador Zethkri read the report 3 times before believing it. A human fleet, 1/3 the size of the Vector force, had completely destroyed the enemy's ability to fight. How is this possible? Council leader Yithara asked. General Nextel was studying the tactical breakdown with growing amazement. They used weapons we didn't know existed. Nuclear missiles, kinetic projectiles, and something called smart munitions. That can change course during flight. But more than that, Zethkri added, they fought with perfect coordination. Every ship knew exactly what every other ship was doing. It was like watching a single organism with dozens of parts. Dr. Carter's voice came over the communication system from the Starfire Council members. This is Dr. Ben Carter. Captain Morrison has asked me to brief you on the engagement. The holographic display activated, showing the battle from multiple angles. Carter's calm, scientific voice described events that had terrified the galaxy's most advanced military minds. The Vector opened hostilities by targeting one of our destroyers. This activated our standard combat protocols. Admiral Baker immediately escalated to full military response. Full military response? General Nextile asked. Total warfare, Carter explained matter-of-factly. Complete elimination of the enemy's ability to continue fighting. The Admiral authorized the use of nuclear weapons and kinetic bombardment systems. The council members sat in stunned silence. The humans had used weapons of mass destruction in their first space battle, and they spoke about it like discussing the weather. Why didn't you try to negotiate? Ethera asked. Carter looked genuinely confused by the question. They fired on our ships. At that point, negotiation was no longer possible. In human military doctrine, any attack on our forces is considered an act of war, but surely some diplomatic solution. Council leader, Carter interrupted gently. With respect, you asked us for military assistance. Humans don't do military assistance halfway. When we fight to win. Captain Morrison's voice joined the conversation. Dr. Carter, what's our assessment of Richter capabilities? Minimal threat, Captain. Their tactics are outdated, their coordination is poor, and their technology is focused on intimidation rather than effectiveness. I estimate our current forces could defeat their entire empire within 6 months. The casual way he said it made Sethkree's blood run cold. 6 months to defeat an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for years. Captain Morrison, Ethera said, carefully, what are your intentions regarding the Varactor Empire? That depends on what you want us to do, Morrison replied. You asked for help against an aggressive enemy. We can provide that help. But you need to understand what human help looks like. General Nextel leaned forward. What does it look like? Complete victory, Morrison said simply. We don't fight. Limited wars, or seek negotiated settlements with aggressors. When someone attacks us, or our allies, we remove their ability to attack again, permanently. Amy Rodriguez's voice added, we've already begun intelligence gathering on Richter territory. Their fleet positions, supply lines, industrial capacity, political structure, standard military preparation. For what? Zethkree asked, though he was afraid of the answer. Invasion, she replied as if it were obvious. The word hung in the air, like a curse. The Galactic Council had never seriously considered invading another empire. Such actions were unthinkable in their peaceful civilization. Perhaps, Ethera suggested desperately, the Varactor will be willing to negotiate now that they've seen your power. Double quotes. Dr. Carter consulted his tablet. Intelligence reports suggest otherwise. Varactor culture doesn't allow for retreat or surrender. They view any defeat as temporary. They'll regroup and attack again. Then what do you suggest? General Nextal asked. Morrison's answer came without hesitation. We remove their ability to make war, destroy their fleet, occupy their industrial worlds, and restructure their government. It's the only way to ensure they won't threaten anyone again. The council members looked at each other in horror. The humans were talking about conquering an entire empire as if it were a routine operation. How long would such an operation take? Zethkree asked weakly. 6 months for the military phase, Commander Stone replied, joining the conversation. Maybe another year for occupation and rebuilding. Depends on how much resistance we encounter. Resistance? Ethera asked. Local populations, insurgent groups, political holdouts, Morrison explained. Standard post-conquest challenges. We have protocols for dealing with them. The casual way the humans discussed conquering and occupying an empire made the council realize they were dealing with a species that had perfected warfare. These beings had fought so many wars that they had developed standard procedures for everything, including what to do after winning. What if we said no? General Nextel asked quietly. What if we decided we didn't want your help anymore? Morrison's voice remained friendly, but firm. That's your choice, General. But the Varactor attacked our territory. We consider that a separate matter from our agreement with you, Amy clarified. The Varactor fired on Earth Defense Force vessels. According to human law, that's an act of war. We will respond appropriately, regardless of the Council's decision. Zethkri felt the galaxy shifting around him. The humans weren't just offering to help against the Vrektor. They were going to destroy the Vrektor Empire whether the Council wanted them to or not. The attack on Earth had made it personal. "What do you need from us?" he asked, realizing they had no choice but to cooperate. "Intelligence on Vrektor territory," Morrison replied. "Fleet positions, industrial capacity, population centers. Also, we'll need staging areas for our forces. Staging areas, forward. Bases for our invasion fleet," Commander Stone explained. "Fuel depots, supply stations, repair facilities. We'll need to project power across significant distances," Dr. Carter added. "We'll also need complete cultural and psychological profiles of the Understanding their society will help us design an effective occupation strategy." The word occupation made Yathara flinch. The humans were already planning what to do with Vrektor territory after they conquered it. "How many ships will you need?" General Nexto asked. "For the initial assault?" "About 200 vessels." Admiral Baker's voice joined the conversation. "The Vrektor have approximately 800 ships total, but they're scattered across their territory. We'll hit them in detail, preventing them from concentrating their forces. 200 ships to attack an empire with 800. The mathematics made no sense to the Council, but the humans seemed confident in their assessment. "What can we do to help?" Zethkri asked. Morrison's reply revealed the true nature of human warfare. "Stay out of our way." As the communication ended, the Council sat in stunned silence. They had asked for allies and received something far more dangerous, a species that viewed galactic scale. Warfare is a manageable problem. The Vrektor Empire had ruled through fear and intimidation for decades. In 47 minutes, they had learned what real predators looked like. Now, those predators were coming for them. Aboard the Starfire, Captain Morrison was already reviewing invasion plans with his staff. The humans had spent centuries perfecting the art of war. They had fought battles across continents and oceans, developed strategies for every conceivable situation. Conquering an interstellar empire was just another problem to be solved. "Rick, I want you to prepare fighter squadrons for deep strike missions," Morrison ordered. "Ben, start analyzing their industrial targets. Amy, coordinate with Admiral Baker on fleet deployment." As his crew worked, Morrison allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had been preparing for hostile contact since they first reached space. Now that it had come, they were ready. The Vrektor had made the mistake of attacking Earth. They would not make any more mistakes. Ever. The human invasion of Vrektor territory began 6 weeks after the Battle of Sol. It was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. General Karen Mitchell stood on the bridge of the assault ship Revenge, watching the first wave of human forces deploy around the Vrektor border world of Kethmer. Around her, 200 Earth Defense Force vessels moved with the mechanical precision that marked human military operations. "Target acquisition complete," reported Commander Lisa Hayes from the tactical station. 43 military installations identified. No civilian populations in the immediate combat zone. "Rules of engagement?" General Mitchell asked. "Standard invasion protocol," came the reply from Admiral Baker aboard the Defiant. "Minimize civilian casualties where possible, but mission success takes priority." General Mitchell nodded. Human military doctrine was clear. War was too serious for half measures. When humans fought, they fought to win completely and permanently. The bombardment began at exactly 0800 Earth Standard Time. Nuclear-tipped missiles rained down on Vrektor military bases, orbital platforms, and fleet positions. The few Vrektor ships that tried to respond were destroyed before they could fire a shot. Within 3 hours, Kethmer's entire military infrastructure was eliminated. Aboard the Galactic Council ship Harmony's Light, Ambassador Zethkri watched. the attack with growing horror. The humans weren't just defeating the Vraktor, they were systematically destroying every aspect of their military capability. "They're not leaving anything standing," General Nextel observed, his voice filled with awe and terror. Dr. Ben Carter's voice came over the communication channel. "That's the point, General. Half measures in warfare just lead to longer conflicts. Better to end it quickly and decisively." Council leader Yithira couldn't bear to watch. The efficiency of human warfare was terrifying. They moved from target to target with methodical precision, leaving nothing to chance. "How can you be so calm about this?" she asked. Captain Morrison answered from the "Because this is what we do, Council leader. Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. We've learned that mercy during combat often leads to more suffering in the long run." The truth was becoming clear to the Council. They had invited a species of professional warriors into galactic politics, beings who treated interstellar warfare like a business problem to be solved efficiently. On Kethmer's surface, the human ground assault began. Unlike the ritual combat that characterized most galactic conflicts, human tactics were designed around the assumption that the enemy would fight desperately to the death. Colonel Rick Stone led the first wave of troops, expecting fierce resistance. What he found instead confused him. "Command, this is Stone," he reported over the radio. "The Vraktor positions are ... strange." "Explain," General Mitchell replied. "They're built for show, not defense. Impressive looking but tactically useless. It's like they designed their fortifications to intimidate rather than actually stop an enemy." Dr. Carter's analysis had been correct. The Vraktor had never faced an opponent that treated war as a science. Their entire military structure was based on psychological warfare rather than actual combat effectiveness. The human assault teams moved through Vraktor positions like they were walking through empty buildings. Resistance was minimal and poorly coordinated. Within 6 hours, the planet was under human control. "Casualties?" General Mitchell asked. 14 wounded, none killed," Colonel Stone reported. "Enemy casualties are estimated at 3,000 military personnel." The disparity in losses stunned the Galactic Council. In 6 hours, the humans had conquered a fortified world while suffering fewer casualties than the Vraktor, typically inflicted in their devastating raids. But the real shock came with the humans' post-conquest procedures. "Phase 2 begins now," Admiral Baker announced to the fleet. Occupation and reconstruction. Human engineering corps immediately began rebuilding the planetary infrastructure they had destroyed. Medical teams started treating wounded Vraktor soldiers. Civil affairs units began establishing local government structures. The humans weren't just conquering the Vraktor Empire, they were systematically rebuilding it under human control. "This is impossible," General Nextal whispered as he watched the reports. "How can they fight so efficiently and then immediately switch to ... this?" Dr. Carter explained patiently. "We've learned that winning the war is only half the job. If you don't properly rebuild afterward, you just end up fighting the same war again later." The pattern repeated across Vraktor territory. Human forces would attack a world, destroy its military capacity within hours, then immediately begin reconstruction under human administration. They moved from system to system with the inexorable momentum of a natural disaster. The Vraktor leadership, trapped on their home world of Kreshver, watched their empire collapse with growing panic. Emperor Vashtar called emergency council meetings, but no one had any idea how to fight an enemy like the humans. "They don't fight like warriors," complained General Krextal. "They fight like ... like machines. Cold and calculating." "What do our spies report?" the Emperor asked. "That's the problem, Your Magnificence. The humans don't seem to consider us a serious threat. Their invasion plans are barely classified. They treat conquering our empire like routine military exercise." The Emperor's mandibles clicked in rage. How dare they treat the mighty Vrector as unimportant? But that was exactly what the humans were doing. To Earth's military leadership, the Vrector Empire was a minor regional power that had made the mistake of attacking a major military force. The solution was obvious: eliminate the threat and rebuild the region under stable management. 3 months into the invasion, Admiral Vrector tried one last desperate gambit. He gathered the remaining Imperial fleet, nearly 200 ships, for a final assault on Earth itself. If we destroy their home world, he declared, they will have to negotiate. It was the same logic that had worked against every other species the Vrector had faced: threaten the home population and force a diplomatic solution. Admiral Baker received the intelligence reports with professional interest. How many ships? He asked. 197 confirmed, his intelligence officer replied, moving toward Seoul in a single formation. Tactical assessment. Commander Stone consulted his tablet. Outdated vessels using predictable tactics. They're bunching together for psychological impact rather than tactical advantage. Estimated engagement time, 30 minutes. Admiral Baker nodded. Alert the defense fleet. Standard anti-invasion protocols. When the Vrector fleet arrived at Seoul, they found the same thing that had greeted their scouts months before: humans ready for war. But this time, Earth's defenses had been reinforced with captured Vrector technology and expanded human production. The battle was even more one-sided than the first engagement. Human forces destroyed the entire Vrector fleet in 28 minutes, suffering no losses. Emperor Vashtar's final transmission came from his dying flagship. What are you? Admiral Baker's reply was calm and professional. We're humans, and you attacked our home. With the destruction of their main fleet, Vrector resistance collapsed entirely. The remaining worlds surrendered without fighting. Their populations, too, terrified to resist the species that had destroyed their empire in less than 4 months. The Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as the humans began the final phase of their operation: complete reorganization of former Vrector territory. What will you do with their worlds? Ambassador Zethkri asked Captain Morrison. Rebuild them, Morrison replied simply. Better infrastructure, democratic governments, integration into galactic trade networks, standard post-conflict reconstruction, and the Vrector themselves, war crimes tribunals for the leadership, re-education programs for the military, economic development for the civilian population. We want them to become productive members of galactic society. The casual way Morrison discussed reshaping an entire species, civilization made Zethkri realize the true scope of what had happened. The humans hadn't just defeated the Vrector Empire, they had replaced it entirely. How long will your occupation last? Council Leader Yithra asked. Dr. Carter consulted his planning documents. 15 to 20 years for complete integration. Maybe longer if we encounter significant resistance to democratic reforms. 20 years. The humans were planning to control former Vrector territory for longer than some galactic governments had existed. And after that, General Nextel asked. Independent democratic governments allied with Earth, Admiral Baker explained. Standard procedure for post-conflict nation building. The council members looked at each other in growing realization. The humans hadn't just solved their Vrector problem, they had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy. What are your intentions regarding the rest of galactic civilization? Yithara asked carefully. Captain Morrison's answer was both reassuring and terrifying. We want to be good neighbors. As long as no one attacks us or our allies, we have no quarrel with anyone. The implied threat was clear. The galaxy now contained a species that could conquer empires as a routine military operation, a species that treated interstellar warfare as a manageable problem. Ambassador Zethkri said final report to the council captured the new reality perfectly. We asked for allies to help us against the Vrector Empire. Instead, we received protectors. who eliminated the Empire entirely. The question now is not whether we can defend ourselves against our enemies, but whether we can coexist with our friends. Captain Morrison's personal log entry was much simpler. Mission accomplished. Threat eliminated. Former enemy territories secured and being rebuilt under human administration. Galaxy appears stable. Looking forward to exploring our new neighborhood and meeting more species. Hope we can all be friends. The humans had solved the Galactic Council's problem with typical human efficiency. They had also introduced a new factor into galactic politics that would change everything forever. The galaxy was now under the protection of Orbital Deathworlders. Whether that was a blessing or a curse remained to be seen. But one thing was certain, no one would ever attack Earth twice.